Navigating stakeholder management while scaling. He'll introduce himself later on, but just quickly before he gets started. I'm your host, and I work here at Product People, Associate Product Manager. And 3 years in product management and 2 years in strategic project management. Worked across different industries, and super happy to be on the product management journey with Product People. Just a quick intro into what Product People themselves do. So our mission is to help companies discover and deliver great products fast. We empower our product management community through LinkedIn specifically. There's a huge following there, 25,000 people or so. Please go and have a look. There's lots of good content there. We share our knowledge generously. We do a lot of the unglamorous hands-on work of product managers, product owners, product ops, product leaders on an interim, or if you want to call it, fractional basis. So 3 months plus. We've got 40 in-house product managers. I can vouch for them. They're all great, acting as interims. Super skilled group of people. We're going to get into a poll quickly just to get some interaction. There we go. I'm going to fill it out quickly. So basically, the first question: what aspects of stakeholder management do you find the most overwhelming during the scaling journey? And how do you currently prioritize customer centricity within your organization? As far as I know, those are anonymous. I'm just going to wait for those results to come back before we move on. Feel free to vote on YouTube if you're there in the comments. Be long now. Cool. So we've got 44% have said that managing stakeholder expectations and demands are the most overwhelming during the scaling journey of stakeholder management. Interesting. Okay. And then tracking and measuring key customer-centric metrics. That's how to currently prioritize customer centricity. Interesting. Okay. Cool. Well, I'm going to let Alex take over. This is about him and his conversation. So looking forward to hearing more, and take it away, Alex.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. I think the result of the survey already kind of showed also what I'm going to tap into quite a bit, because it many times does feel overwhelming during a scaling journey to see, like, okay, how do I manage all these requests coming from seemingly endless different areas, and I was like, while you still want to be consumer centric. So I'm Alex, and working at Riverty, a company that does payments and collection services, as well as accounting services. So working in the fintech area, and we've gone through a transformation ourselves, coming from rather a customer service oriented group to transforming into a tech organization. So as I am trying to share my screen, I'll quickly talk about that about that balancing act that we probably, or many of us, go through each and every day, being a product manager, being a product lead, and maintaining that balance at a healthy level. And I think that's many times a challenge that you see when going from a small early startup, where it's really about selling to your consumers, convincing them, and making sure you understand them to the very detail, to then if you become 200, 300, 1,000 employee company, because you've been successful in understanding consumers, to maintain a healthy level of that. And I'm going to focus a lot of today talking about internal stakeholder management. I know there's of course maybe an even bigger chunk if you remove the internal piece, but that's something that I'll be focusing on. So let's start. Why is internal stakeholder management super important? First of all, right? We probably make a lot more informed decisions. We have people that probably know the legal constraints that we have a lot better than we could ever, right? Because we bring in experts, and sometimes legal also breaks up into smaller pieces. All of a sudden, your legal companion that you started maybe out with all of a sudden gets a team, and then there's somebody that's super deep into compliance, and all of a sudden it's not the legal guy anymore, but you have a compliance department and a legal department, and then maybe that compliance department even breaks up. So you see there's like all of a sudden that information that these people can give, that resource is super valuable. The next thing is they can allocate resources to your path, to your product discovery. They can come in with good input, and when they're part of that, they also a product advocate. Yeah, they help you bring out that message, not just transform that internally, but also bring it to their market, to their peers. They might have not a product people group, but maybe a legal people group or a sales people group, right? Where they discuss these kind of matters and see, like, okay, how does a product influence that? It mitigates the risk of you as a product person to take wrong decisions, right? So many times we're faced with taking a decision on the get-go and fast, and probably in areas where it's like, if we are honest to ourselves, sometimes probably things like, should I really make a decision here? I have literally this much of a clue. So from a risk management perspective, this is completely natural. They support us in many ways and make sure that in the decisions that we make, that we feel more comfortable. We make sure that we are aligned on objectives that we set together, and they give us feedback. Yeah, it's another thing that I think many times we underestimate, is like how valuable the feedback is from our peers in our companies. And I think I've previously discussed that with many product peers, that sometimes it feels like we as product are some sort of holy grail, and the product people will do everything. But it's like the feedback that we get from internal stakeholders, if that's customer service or our account managers, that's so important to make sure that we build the right products too. And at the end of the day, they're the ones that execute also then on change management that is needed once we bring out certain products. And I brought with me an overview of what an average product manager spends their time on, and this is an average. It comes from McKinsey. We were laughing about it a bit earlier today. It's like, hey, the big consultancy firms, they start jumping onto product management these days and analyze as like what kind of work we do. This is an average, and I found this fairly striking, with that the average when it comes to engaging with our customers or partners is exactly the same amount as we spend with other functions within our organization, right? So it's really on an even scale. That said, my strong gut feeling, and probably in the conversation later on that we can have here, is probably like early on, the engaging with the customer makes a much bigger chunk, right? And that's something that I'll continue to tap into during this conversation or during this presentation. But it's about a quarter of the time apparently on an average for me as a product lead. I'm probably on the end where the engaging with internal functions becomes a bigger chunk. Yeah, so as I have more team responsibilities, but when we look at product management at its core, I found this is probably a good way of looking at this. But then again, average is not necessarily great. So I think that's something that, of course, everybody needs to answer for ourselves. And when we look at growing organizations in the context of this, one needs to understand communication streams grow exponentially. So if let's say you're the product manager, and since we're a product-led organization in this case, product is in the center, but you have 4 departments, and you see is like there's not that many communication streams necessarily, right? But if you then all of a sudden say it's like, hey, I just don't have now, smaller merchants, but I also have key accounts. You open up like a key account management setup, and you just add 2 functions. All of a sudden you see this this pattern that, hey, wow, I need to now communicate in many more different directions. And if you add another 2 departments, all of a sudden this almost looks super fancy mathematician setup, right? But this is how you see exponentially the need for communication, that everybody keeps being on the same page, is just blowing out of proportion. And I bet many of you here probably even have more let's say internal stakeholders that you need to take care of, and that's probably something where most people will feel like when many people will start leaving the company, because you're not there for, let's say, the account manager that you usually used to have coffee with every day, or that you would have the time to have in between chats, because quite frankly, it's like we can't give everybody the exposure that they did before or previously if they've been with the company. And that's something to be aware of, that this comes naturally, right? It's basically plain math that we see here. And that's I think the first kind of thing that I try to teach everybody. Be aware of that fact. And yes, you will get the feedback. Back in the days, everything was better, because of course it was, because we were not as successful. We couldn't have that many people in our organization participating within this journey. So that's something I feel I wanted to share first and foremost. And looking at that, so when you see this changing, and I just made a little view, is like, hey, if your organization is growing, yes, the collaboration with other function is increasing, but that's where you need to intervene, right? The first intuition is, of course, to counterbalance. Is like, I'll skip, I know my customer by now, so I can skip customer interviews. I know my strategy, so I'm not going to spend time. So these 2 buckets here at the very top that you see in defining product strategy and engaging with customers is usually the ones where you cut out the most time to make time for more customer engage, for more internal stakeholder management. And that's something that intuition is what you need to fight once you understand that you're in a scaling organization. And so if you want, you can take a little screenshot of this QR code. I've prepared an Excel that you can download, so you can see basically, hey, where are you today versus that average. I think we'll share the link in the chat too. But just to see is like, because I think that's very important. And the first activity that I feel that's helped me is basically structure your calendar. It's make yourself aware, how much time do you even spend? Is it really the 12%? Is it the 6%? And on different efforts, you need to make sure that you hold that. And one thing that many people get wrong with is like, I have a fully packed calendar. Yes, you can have a fully packed calendar, but it shouldn't be just meetings, right? You could your time where you do, product focus time, defining your product, working on your product strategy, reviewing customer feedback if you have whatever, an app, or if you're in Trustpilot, or whatever it is, right? This is also part of your work. Make that part of your calendar, because the first thing is really about awareness. Am I spending too much time on something where I should not be spending that much time on, right? And at the end of the day, create awareness for yourself, but also share that with others. And I think being part of a large organization is also not for everybody. I mean, that's also a natural process, right? Not everybody wants to go from, being in the middle and being involved everywhere to being part of a large organization. So I think those two kind of awareness factors are super, super important. And first thing that, truly helps me is making sure that I kind of code my calendar. I'm not calculating how many % I spend every week, but with a first glance at it, I can kind of tell, is like this week's focus is quite intense. Do I offset that maybe with a next week or a week after? But just to hold that, and book your own routines. That's really something important. And with every packed calendar that I see, and I've been at the forefront of packed calendars over my career for a large stretch there. What I find really important and what I want to share here is make sure you take breaks, so that you set your Outlook calendar or whatever calendar you have to say, hey, let's always start 5 after, because there's a fantastic study done from Microsoft's Human Factors Lab, which basically shows your brain stress levels if you have just a 5-minute break in between your meetings versus not. Because as we see and also saw in your feedback in the early survey there, it's like it feels stressful to have to navigate so many stakeholders, to have to navigate, and you can handle this so much better if you take small breaks, right? Let's be friends with our brain capacity, and work on that, and really, take that as a lesson. If that's the only thing that you kind of take away from today, I'm more than happy. Every mission accomplished. But make sure that with less stress, you're also much easier to communicate, right? Everything becomes a lot easier. Then when you think about the actual organizational setup, yet again, yes, you will have routines with different stakeholders, but at some point it's totally necessary that you bundle routines. At some point of scale, it's like you will have to talk to the service desk and the account management at the same time, because they have such a big overlap, for example, and you will probably know that best for your organization, to make sure that you will 90% cover the same topics. And for that, don't do justice to everybody just because it doesn't feel 100% fit for purpose. In this case, also 80% is okay. But by the fact that you would just bundle a couple, if it's marketing and sales or legal and compliance, as I mentioned earlier, that really helps you. And ensure or demand that this will happen on leadership level too, right? Because if you're fighting by yourself and saying, hey, I want to make sure that I have less of these dependencies or communication needs, make sure you do that. And I think that's really something that I've learned over the course of now becoming or being part of a company that has 5,000 employees. It's so critical and vital for the mental health of all of us to make sure that we keep communicating, but we communicate in proper setups. And that's also then, of course, on cadence, right? If you have a session where you feel like you talked about this just 2 weeks ago, about the exact same, and nothing has progressed, well, increase the time frame to every 4 weeks, of course, right? Feel bold in doing that. But of course, also when you feel like the other person or the other group that you're talking to cannot comprehend of what you're actually talking about, that's of course when you need to increase that cadence. So I'm not saying it's like just drop and it's like we're definitely far from a Shopify that basically says like cancel all meetings. And we've seen how they rolled out now their new functionality on counting what every meeting costs. But we need to make sure that we also keep that focus on our customer. And another one that I feel that helps a lot is, of course, investing in async communication. And it's not just updating Confluence pages, but it's a part, right? It's like some good structure of documentation needs to be there, but what really helps is internal demos, because it first of all makes sure that everybody's in the loop, what's coming out. It's also your final feedback round that you have is like, did I miss something completely, or is there some nuance that I forgot, or somebody was on holiday and didn't get the memo and probably has some good input. And once you've done that, because internal demos is quite some effort and takes probably a lot of time away from you, transfer that into external demos. The effort from moving from an internal demo, then a couple of weeks later to make it external once the product is launched, I think this is also a possibility not just to showcase your product, but also put your brain into the position of the consumer yet again, right? So it's another possibility for us as product managers to understand our consumers better. How would I show that? And that's really something that I feel has helped myself in my upbringing within Riverty as a product manager and now a product lead quite a lot, and use video messages for big decisions, also to maintain internal stakeholders. Video for sure is best, and it becomes so easy. I mean, there's fantastic AI tools out there right now that cut away our ums and ams. You don't need to be a professional speaker yet, and that's really something where you can catch a lot of people at the same time. But then again, even though asynchronous communication is there, we also need to let people know, it's like, hey, when and where do they have to kind of check. So a proper structure, and we talked about product operations early on. I guess this is really where that comes in, is like, make sure all of this is a bit maneuvered, and make sure that you as a scaling organization help your product teams, and not put all this like, yep, product manager, do this and this and this and this on top. Yeah, let's also help each other, and when we scale, to implement functions that support that we can roll these things out, and be that, for example, a video messaging tool that enables or gains everybody's confidence of doing such communication. And I mean, there's even mini hints. Is like, many times I say, but I don't have a really cool recording tool. The fewest people have pressed Windows Alt R for recording. So within like half a second, you have spun up your video recording if you're using a Windows computer. So it's sometimes much easier than we think it is. And I think that's basically the message I want to give here. So looking into this, avoid the knowledge curse by establishing a strong cadence of customer engagement, right? So we talked a lot about internal stakeholders and how to minimize this, but if you cannot balance, or if you think, or if I think that is like, hey, I know my customers, they change much more frequently than I give them justice to. So ensuring that I have my routines planned of, talking to customers, that I do my reviews of whatever app reviews or any public reviews that there are, or go to customer service and pick up the phone myself. I mean, those are the things that we need to do, that we need to avoid the knowledge curse, saying as like, hey, I've done this so much, so I cut away rather on this. So make sure that you hold your balance to serve and make sure that customer engagement stays even. And from my own, like, it should even be a bit higher to internal stakeholder management, but that's probably, of course, a bit dependent on where you are and what their organizational circumstances are. And last but not least, that one thing that my team also gave me very good feedback on. We set up quests, for I think we had it bi-weekly at some point and moved it to a monthly. But basically, it's like, hey, make sure you give spaces. If you're a leader, also to your team, is like, hey, do answer 5 customer service requests within that time frame, and give a review of what you discovered, because all of a sudden you rediscover your product, especially if it's been more established. You're going to rediscover quite a few topics. Do cold calls together with sales, or use a sales presentation that you might have given input a couple of months ago. Help customers on any rating platform. And maybe even set the target that you do that in such a good way that you increase your rating, so you even have a double positive in that. So I think those are some of the tools that we've used to ensure to balance that, because the struggle is for sure real, and that's basically what I wanted to share today. And happy for any questions, feedback, or any discussions going on.
Thanks so much for that, Alex. That was great. I'm hoping there's going to be a few questions. I have at least 1 or 2. While those questions come in, I'm just going to share my screen again. Cool. So we're just going to wait for those questions to come in. We're just going to talk a little bit more about product people and what we do while we wait for those. So the use cases for us, when to use us, are interim, fractional. Those are the same thing. Product managers or product leaders. So we do permanent position covers 3 to 9 months. When you're hiring, it often takes a while to find the right person. We'll cover you for that. Rental covers, the usual 3 to 12 months, and then important and urgent initiatives. Those are, I would say, the bread and butter, where we're really good with product discovery as well. And then we've got product coaching and product consulting. We've got incredibly experienced product managers in our leadership team that really can help you there. And then we've got, like I said, product discovery, where we'll come in and find opportunities for you and help run low-code and no-code pilots. Moving on that thread onto what we don't do. So we're not a dev shop, so we can't help you with that, but we can put you in touch with people that are great devs. We're not a freelance marketplace as well. And we're not recruiters. So, I mean, those are all pretty self-explanatory. Our bread and butter is interim product managers, product leaders. And that's where we have our biggest impact, and we focus in that niche. Some of our clients, just to back up and validate what I've just said, but free now, Freeletics, back markets. I'm sure most of these will be companies that you're all aware of. Zalando, Douglas, and then our B2B clients, Happy World Health Organization, Remote.com. So we've got some big names, which is really great. Those are all the lovely things people have said about us. Move on to what are stats. So we've worked with 70 plus clients from Series A to publicly listed companies, multiple teams within those clients. Like I said previously, we've got 40 product leaders and product managers internally that are at your disposal. And then one of our main stats here is that 66% of our leadership team is female, and 6% of the entire team is female, which is really great. What a great looking bunch. Jeez, I'm not even on that one. We are hiring. We've got senior product management consultant and a growth and associate product management consultant, so 2 of those. You can go to our website. Our website actually has our job board, and you can go to apply there. It's a 7-step process. We hire on skills, not so much CV. So yeah, so everyone gets a fair chance. It's great. Thanks for listening. We're going to go to the Q&A now, and hopefully you guys will have your questions in. Okay. So one of the first questions coming in here are, as the many scale, hang on, let me just read this quickly. As the company scales, employees' roles and responsibilities change. How do leaders adapt stakeholder management practices to keep the employees motivated during this transition? It's a really good question.
Yeah, I think first of all, I think it's definitely the case is like you need to make sure everybody continues to feel engaged. Yeah, because it's fairly easy to check out if he says like, okay, but now they've hired 3 other whatever people to do parts of my job.
Sure.
So that's definitely one where you then of course need to draw up then also path into how do you extend your scope, how do you move on to a new role maybe. So vertical and horizontal development path need to be transparent. And as you're on a scaling organization, I think it's always important to highlight that fact, right? Because especially during scale moments, your organization will continuously change, and that change usually creates opportunities just by its nature, and that's something that once you get into that situation, or once you are in that situation, make yourself aware, or make your team members aware of just that fact.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. Kind of on the back of that, so how do you balance the interests of different stakeholders such as investors, customers, employees, communities when making critical decisions during the scaling process? So I mean, that's super valid as well.
Yeah, so I think the competition between the different let's say stakeholders, it's not so much about a competition, but rather the lack of understanding where the need from some stakeholders come from versus the need from others. Yeah, sure. Because we all know that we work in our little bubble for a bit, and then it's like, but it's like, I'm working in customer service, and it's like, we don't need another client now because we have too much to do anyways, right? And then sales will come from somewhere completely else. But and then it's like, but we need to be cheaper. So why doesn't have customer service? Why don't they have, maybe more automation, right?
Yeah.
So that's of course what's coming in. But if you make aware that it's like, hey, we have these stakeholder groups, these are the different requests, and this is for the time being how we balance these things out. That transparency and is so vital of making them understand each other, and it also empowers you to make better decisions and seeing as like, hey, where do I need to put the brakes on, where do I accelerate? And that's I think one piece of advice that I would give at this point.
There's another question here that's very similar. I don't know if you can expand on that as well. And it's said, how do you manage stakeholders' competing priorities whilst trying to deliver on your day-to-day role? So similar to the scaling, but it's on a day-to-day process. Yeah, I guess similar approach.
Well, so try. Yeah, I think that the big topic is like you cannot have stakeholder conflicts or difference of opinion impact your day-to-day life. Yeah, I think that's one of the defense mechanisms that you will have to put up. You need to give them a certain cadence, a certain structure that is like, hey, I'll hear you out, but at given times, to make sure that I can funnel that and can weigh these different inputs. If you every day are going to be exposed by all of your let's say stakeholders, you will not be able to balance, and because then you're going to turn into like, I'm going to say yes today and I'm going to say no tomorrow, right? And just because somebody starts yelling at you or is super nice because they just had coffee with you and you get along well, you need to make sure that, I don't know, it's like you set up whatever monthly routines, or if in OKR frameworks, you many times refer to like quarterly planning kind of mechanisms, but you cannot let that influence your day-to-day. Your prime role as a product manager is to set up the strategy, define the product, and engage with solving hard problems. And that's if you allow that to be interfered with daily stakeholder asking you to say, but can you do this for me now? Can you do that for me now? You're gonna feel a super heavy burden on yourself mentally, but at the same time, you will always be the one that has like, yeah, but he said yes and now he says no, because you can't balance, should I listen to stakeholder X or stakeholder Y anymore? And that's really set the cadence. Without that, you're just gonna swim and swim and swim and feel like you're drowning all the time.
How does that work when you've got product leaders or just leaders in the business that are kind of throwing their weight around without realizing it, just because they are, in that position?
Yes, leaders many times have selective hearing when it comes to that. So if you're a sales leader, you're gonna hear it's like, okay, you're gonna not pay attention when somebody's talking. It's like, what kind of customer service improvement are you gonna have? Because that's maybe it's like, early on maybe, but later on they're just gonna say, hey, how do you cut down costs, blah blah blah, right? And that's when selective hearing becomes super interesting. So I've studied communication for quite a long time. When it comes to tell people what you're not gonna do, because that's again where you catch them. Right? That's again, it's like, hey, we're not going to do that because we will be focusing on somebody else's need.
Okay.
And that really puts you into a whole nother conversation. All of a sudden you get that attention and you get that understanding, because they will understand, because that's why they're leaders.
Sure.
That's why you're going to have leadership conversations with them. But that's basically a nice tweak to talk about what you're not going to do, and what we say no to is as much, it's probably even more given guidance what our strategy is than saying it's like what we're all going to do.
Yeah, well, they say the product manager's first job is to say no more than he says yes.
Absolutely, and for leaders even more so, and you grab that attention, it works magic.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So there's another question here on the customer service theme that we had earlier. How do you scale your customer service operations effectively while ensuring consistent, personalized interactions with customers?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
How do you scale your customer service operations effectively while ensuring consistent and personalized interactions with customers?
Well, if you grow to a size where you have, let's say, 1 million customers, if we're talking about a B2C business, or if in the B2B space is probably already happening, if you get your customer number 500 in, it's ensuring that the people that actually talk to the people, so customer service, or we merchant success areas, that they feel that they are still changing the company for good. And now I'm actually going to talk about my company, even though at the beginning I tried to say it's like we're not going to do it.
Just trying to get you to take me on.
So we've come from a customer service organization, where we do debt collection. Debt collection is probably the shittiest experience that you as a customer can have, right? Somebody is like, writing you an email and says like, hey, you haven't paid your bill yet, right? So once we incentivized our agents to work on our how positive the product will be perceived, if you go on our Trustpilot ratings, most of the 5 stars comes out of our debt collection business by now, right? So you can make sure that you need to keep any customer engagement very close to the product, and says like, hey, you are part of the product, you're an extended voice of the product, and if you manage to do that, you're gonna get great results. You're gonna be like, they will help the customers, and then a claim that is like, hey, we're gonna be the most customer centric. It's not just a claim anymore, but but it's part of your offering. And if you keep that relationship between the product and these customer service, that can also then scale. Yeah. But it won't scale if the only thing that these people perceive is like, we're going to automate away your jobs, because I mean that's it's like, we build AI chatbots and we won't need this and we're going to cut down on that. That's not going to work, right? That's going to work for for a part of the journey, but we will always have questions that can't be answered, and that human interaction and the importance that these humans that are working for us to engage with our customers, if they know that they're contributing to the company and its targets and the product's targets, that really helps you to scale. And that's something, for example, that I'm super proud of with my current company here. Yeah,
I mean, there's people who are clearly listening, because the questions that are coming in are off the back of pretty much every question everything you've answered. So the next question that's coming here is, how do you empower your employees to make customer-focused decisions at every level of the organization? So coming off the back of that conversation is pretty much just teeing you up on the next one.
Yeah, that's of course one of the most difficult things. So I would rather say, but that's maybe my personal take, is rather don't add page 186 to your guidebook. Yeah. If your vision of the product is strong, they will understand. Yeah, they will understand how to answer, what to answer. If you're in an economic tough situation, like many companies are, right? You probably also then, if you transport that message, then people say like, yeah, but maybe for the next coming month, we might need to be a bit stricter at customer service and not get a free replacement in for whatever product that we send out. So cut maybe 1 or 2 pages out of your book, and they will follow your vision. That's it sounds so freaking tough, especially now when everybody is looking at P&Ls and not just revenue any longer. But that's, if you truly believe that your service can be superior to customers, then also they will pay more for it eventually if you help them out. So it's a flywheel, huh? You want the customers to keep coming back. Acquisition is more expensive than retention. We all know that. So that's
so from the customer, so from the employee point of view, just basically just show them the vision. Just sell them on your vision, essentially, and they'll do what you would do in that situation.
And that's super tough if you're 20,000 employees or 30,000, right? That's much easier when you're 20, 50, right? Because then everybody, you can be the messenger. But if you feel like your message isn't received in for employee number 1,500, then you need to engage with their leaders. And so it's like, hey, have you honed down and into our vision and our strategy?
100%. So there's another question here about managing the stakeholders with tools. So what tools have you found have been super productive, super useful in that managing internal stakeholders?
What tools? I think I'm a bit tied to our tech stack, so I'm not going to make too many advertisement for Microsoft or Atlassian at this point. But I think it's not so much about the tools; it's about your discipline to use the tools. I would assume that almost every company that we work in right now has some sort of Zoom, Slack, Teams, Google, whatever it is, right? To communicate. I think asynchronous communication is many times what we underestimate. That's what I tried to highlight in the presentation. Make sure you do a small video grab of a decision that was important. It's like, and that if that can be, then you think, but I only got 4 likes on our intranet. But it can still be something that you can refer to in a conversation that you say like, hey, this is it. And with product operations coming in, when you scale, they probably can advocate for that too. But it's really, you make use of the power of that, and make use of the power of your product. The more often that you show your product, the more people understand your product that you're doing. Because sometimes it's like, I don't know how this feature really works in detail, and product never says. So make use of demos, because that's when your stakeholders learn, but also where you're naturally exchanging and keeping them updated.
That makes sense. Yeah, lean on tools you already have.
Yeah, I mean, there's fantastic. I mean, as everywhere, AI is helping us a bucket load. Wow.
Yeah.
That was close.
Yeah.
But that's like, not everybody is the most natural speaker, right? So it's like we will have avatars speaking for us, and it's like you can make use of some of those tools. So if you're really struggling with some of those pieces, I feel free to ping me, and I can point you into direction. I try to away. I already mentioned a few companies' name today, so I'm not going to do a whole advertisement run here. But there's of course additional tooling that can help, and hopefully is going to be adopted into the regular, let's say, suites.
Must do. So there's one last question here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just, does your stakeholder management strategy or customer centricity approach change whether you are product led or sales
led? Yes. I mean, in a sales led setup, I have utmost trust in our salespeople to transport that information towards the product, right? And that's that trust level becomes so much more important. So your engagement with sales needs to be much tighter than in a product-led setup, where you're the one that takes a much bigger stake in interviewing stakeholders or interviewing consumers or clients or whatever. So I truly believe, and usually the sales led, that's usually a classic B2B, B2B2C setup. Yeah, you will seldomly find that in B2C companies any longer. Yeah, but it's in these companies, make sure you're like every day you're with sales, and also to ensure, because then it's so much more needed. So internal stakeholder interaction will be just so much higher, because it's your channel out there. But at the same time, once you do that, it almost becomes then product centric, because that trust level is so high, that they will always is like, hey, can you come with? And that's a level that in a sales led organization you need to get to. If not, it's meant for breakups.
Okay. I think that's it from the questions. You have been incredibly informative. Jeepers. That was wow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we're going to end the live recording now. If you can maybe come back as well. If you don't mind sticking around, Alex.